Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Product Show. Have you heard of Marshmallow? And I'm not talking about sweets here. Marshmallow is a UK-based car insurance provider that made a name for itself after becoming one of the latest UK unicorns. Founded by twin brothers Alexander and Oliver and their friend David, the company went from an idea to a unicorn in 4 years. So how are they different? Unlike traditional insurers, they use a new data-driven approach to determining risk, which allows them to offer lower prices to customers that traditional insurance companies struggle with, like immigrants, expats, and nomads. To learn how they're achieving this phenomenal growth, I spoke to their VP of Product, Martin Schwitzner. Martin is also an ex-Amazon, OpenTable, and Fly.com product leader, so you'll hear plenty of useful tips in the next 35 minutes. Enjoy this episode, and as usual, don't forget to subscribe to our channels wherever you're watching or listening.
Welcome to The Product Show. Insightful interviews with founders and tech leaders sharing how they hack product growth.
Hi Martin, welcome to The Product Show.
Hi Daisy, happy to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So, VP of Product at one of UK's newest unicorns. That must be quite exciting. So, tell me a little bit more about your professional journey so far, and what does your role at Marshmallow entail?
Sure. I originally started in film, and then went kind of from film to video games into tech. And when I made that jump, I thought, product is probably the role that makes most sense for me. And so I started working at a company called TravelZoo, and they founded an internal startup, Fly.com, which was a flight meta search engine. So kind of competing with Kayak and Skyscanner. So worked there, and kind of by the end of it led the European product and marketing teams. And then I worked at OpenTable at quite an interesting time for the company. So we got acquired halfway into my tenure there by what's now the Booking Group, Booking.com, and then among other things kind of worked on the integration of the OpenTable product with that group. And then kind of went back to my film roots a bit, went to Amazon, where I worked at Prime Video, and then kind of had a long project with the devices group, so the Fire TV devices group as well. And then after Amazon, I kind of wanted to do more. I kind of gotten bigger and bigger in terms of the company size, and I wanted to specifically do more startup stuff. And so I worked with Glue, which is a logistics startup that's kind of a smart lock-based ecosystem for in-home delivery of services and goods, and kind of built the initial product and design function there. And then I got called back to video, worked in Germany, and was part of the senior leadership team that built basically what's a German Hulu, a streaming platform for live broadcast, ad-supported video on demand, and subscription packages, a company called Join, and that was really exciting. So we launched it, and we went from 0 to 7 million monthly active users in a few months. And then I was on my way to South America. I'd started working for Rappi, which is, I think at the moment, the biggest Latin American startup. So they do food delivery, e-commerce, and grocery deliveries. And I was leading the kind of customer-facing product for the restaurant product in 8 markets in Latin America. Long story short, that COVID kind of scuppered that, and we no longer could move to Bogota in a time frame that made sense for us as a family.
Oh, wow.
And then so I kind of did some consulting because I wanted to find something, that I could stick with and kind of get my teeth into. And so helped Lentum, a health tech startup, and worked with them for a few months, and kind of some other smaller startups, but mainly Lentum. And then did a lot of calls with startups, and Marshmallow was the one that stuck for me. So I lead the product and the design teams. And I also sit on the senior leadership team. And so it's leading those function, and then kind of representing them at the senior level.
Right. So after the latest funding, Marshmallow is officially a unicorn. So from an idea to a unicorn in less than 4 years, that's really phenomenal. And I can imagine it's a really exciting time to join the company. So how did they do it, and how are they different from a traditional car insurer?
Well, I mean, I can't really take much of that credit there. I wasn't here for most of that journey. But what I noticed was, the founders and the team in general, just, very strong and very focused and very deliberate. And, so it wasn't, knowing them, it's not really surprising that they got that done. And I think in how we differ, so I would say that today, most of our differentiation versus the market is in how we work with data and how we work, around the pricing aspect of insurance and the fraud aspect. And then increasingly, we're starting also to differ, the kind of more immediately consumer-facing aspects of insurance.
Right. So yeah, for me as an outsider, it feels like a huge part of their success is the digital experience, and this alongside the kind of more fresh, modern branding and the more inclusive approach to insurance, it kind of really sets them for success. So, what are the top reasons why people choose Marshmallow instead of your competitors?
I think, well, maybe first to add on, like, to your previous questions, I think like one thing that really differentiates us is that, we're kind of a product and tech first operation, which I think it's fair to say that a lot of like the legacy incumbents in the market are not. And, for now, and at times that's maybe like a philosophical difference, but I think, it compounds over time on how we approach problems. And I think it also makes us like inherently a more customer centric and customer-focused company. Why people choose Marshmallow? So today in motor insurance in the UK, the biggest reason why someone chooses an insurer, it's a product you have to buy legally, is pricing. But I think there's also already an element that we see. I think we feel a bit more like other, more modern products that people use in their life, and that helps us. And I think with the changes that are coming in the market, so there's certain reforms from a regulatory point of view on the way, we are very well positioned to kind of like really bank on that strength and build on it.
So the big data innovative approach allow you to do kind of a phenomenal job with acquiring users and user growth. I know you're gonna say you don't want to take the credit for that, but you're part of this team now, so I'm sure there is already a contribution you should be proud of. So the latest public data from September was 100,000 policies, and I guess this is even higher now.
Yeah, it keeps rising.
All right, I can imagine. So that's great. Right. So, what's your plan to sort of deepen the relationship with your current customer? As you rightly mentioned, I think that I don't really want to hear from my insurer unless there is a problem, or even I don't want to hear about problems. So, what I care is the premium, what does the policy include, and what other customers are saying. So, what do you do to keep them loyal and be more than just an insurer?
Yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, your insurer is almost specifically the type of company you don't want to be in touch with, because usually it means bad news. And, part of how we approach it is trying to look at, really deepening that relationship with the customer, and, particularly then at their hour of their need, be there. We published our mission recently, and that's focused both on being there when they need us, but then also, a long-term aspiration is to really help people to suffer less in the case of motor, less accidents and less tragedy in the first place. So kind of, preventional kind of measures there. And so that's something that we increasingly focus on of, how do we move our relationship from the like classic purely transactional part of insurance, or the transactional touch points you have with your insurer, to a deeper relationship and of deeper trust as well.
That's interesting. So can you give us a few examples of, what would be a form of a deeper relationship I could have with my insurer? Is it more kind of content, or is it more sort of AI driven insights that would help me potentially have less accidents and be a more responsible driver? Is it this sort of thing we're talking about?
So it's definitely those things. I kind of don't want to jump the gun, but it's along those lines. So there's some really exciting stuff that is coming, and where we're taking also some like really long-term approaches on basically helping people drive safer through content and other means. But then it's also like on the more day-to-day. So it's one of our things that is important to us is owning more and more of the entire kind of value chain and customer experience. And so, a more immediate piece is we are just starting now to fully own, the claims process. So, if God forbid something happens to you and, you have to call us. So from the point that you call us to, hopefully everything is resolved. We've really invested in kind of like trying to own that process. There's obviously other, parts involved from, people that repair your car and all of that. But so we have taken measures to like really own that all the way through. And, that's something that we'll be building on over the next year and beyond. So that's one area. And then, like you mentioned, with technological advances in terms of AI and analyzing driving styles and, different methods of content delivery and the technology that's in cars. So there's a lot of opportunity for us there.
Yeah, surely. So it sounds like if, as you said, God forbid something happens, you'd kind of assist me throughout the whole journey while I'm dealing with it, not just when I need to just call to make a claim, right?
Exactly. And, and sometimes that actually means saving you a call to us by just keeping you informed, because you don't, increasingly like customers in all kind of different areas of business, having a call is increasingly disruptive to your life because you're just increasingly more used to like just seeing updates on your phone. And
right.
So, yeah.
Okay, right. Interesting. So going through Marshmallow's profiles online, I can see that there is a great effort invested in your online reputation and mainly generating customer reviews. So for example, on Trustpilot, you have over 7,000 reviews with rating 4.6. So we all know, I'm not saying that these are not real reviews, but this is not exactly organically. I mean, you must be doing something that sort of generates these reviews. And the reason I'm asking this is like when we're building products here at Pony, websites and apps and other products, the first thing we would advise our clients is go and collect as many reviews as you can on Google reviews, on Trustpilot, Reviews.io, whatever platform you want. You just need as many positive reviews as possible out there. There is no better social proof.
Yeah.
And I can see you're totally taking like the advantage of it, and probably I would start giving Marshmallow as an example, a great example, how many reviews you have generated for such a young company. So can you tell me a little bit more about the mechanic and the approach to generating so many customer reviews?
Well, I mean, I guess the overall secret is really like treat your customers well and they will talk about it, right?
Absolutely. I can imagine that this is the main thing, but still there must be something, around the mechanic or when exactly during the customer journey you generate those.
So, one thing at Marshmallow, both kind of in how we work together, everyone here in the team, and we extend that to our relationship with the customers. It's a very feedback heavy culture. And, most of those reviews, do search from, genuine, all of them search from genuine, good customer interactions. And, we do occasionally then ask customers directly for feedback when we speak with them. And that's, really important part of the culture here in terms of being close to the customer and getting that feedback. Getting that feedback also like among teammates. And what I was mentioning earlier, obviously, like most of our customer contacts are on the claims process, right? And so, we saw that there was feedback there that we wanted to act on. So not all of it was positive, right? So that's why we focus so much on that part, and we'll continue to focus. And then we see the results in the in the positive reviews.
Other than collecting customer feedback, how do you usually monitor the changing consumer needs, not only at Marshmallow, but also at the other companies you've worked at? For example, many people don't need to commute to work anymore, so they might question if they need a car at all because of the high insurance cost on a monthly basis. I might want to use an insurer that offers great short-term car insurance, for example. How do you make sure you detect those early signs, but also you adapt your offering quickly?
Sure. I think like the main point, and it's quite a broad point, but I think it's just simply the most important thing there is, the closer you stay to your customers, and the more customer centric your culture, and the more likely you have a chance to kind of detect, changes in consumer behavior, and gain the ability to continue to serve those customers, and adapt around them. So I think that's really like the general point here of staying close to customers. On specifically on the pandemic and cars being less driven, the pandemic hopefully is not a permanent feature in our life, but I think there's a general trend in insurance products, or in what customers seek. There is a higher level of customization, and so one aspect of that is, for example, when do I need my car and not, and how does that align with when and how I pay for insurance. But there's like the vast majority of cars did stay registered, right, as the during this period. But there's like an overall kind of sense that a lot of kind of product lines or product types, if you think about it, in the last 20, 30 years, have become increasingly customizable for consumers, right? And so insurance really, broadly speaking, has stayed a fairly static type of product. And so that that's one of our focuses, that we are looking at increasingly offering customization options going forward.
Do you think that the fact that it's not a tiny company anymore, but obviously it's still a startup, that is sort of an advantage especially for Marshmallow, because your adaptability is probably much better than a traditional larger organization? Because one thing is detecting the changing needs, but the other thing is acting on them. And we've seen like so many examples of company that went busted because they cannot adapt quickly enough.
Yeah, definitely. I guess I would say, again, broadly, that's always one of the competitive advantage you have as a startup versus like large, workforce type incumbents, is the ability to decide more quickly and to be more nimble and act faster. But I think also as you grow, you want to like maintain that as a part of your culture, right? And I think the key there again is to be guided by the customer and stay focused on the customer, because that's what allows you to kind of see these changes, right? Otherwise, they might ever so slowly pass you by in the end. And and I think that's something that's very important for us, as we face like continuous growth, in terms of both like the amount of customers that we serve, but also of the team, to maintain that nimbleness and that focus.
Right. So you joined the team shortly before they raised their Series B funding. So how has your role changed in the last few months? And overall, from your experience, how do you think the role of the head of product is changing depending on the size, but also the maturity of the company?
Yeah, I think so. I did speak to Alexander, one of our co-founders, like, roughly weekly for a few months, even before I joined. But like, the focus I've come in with hasn't really changed, because it was, in view of the changes that are going in the company and kind of fitting that next stage. And I think what that generally is it moves a bit from tactical to strategical. And then particularly, for whoever holds the role of head of product, or, what generally tends to happen is, you tend to be much closer to the product decisions and influence them, and in some cases maybe even make them more directly. And then that just becomes impossible as you grow. And so I think it's about, building structures then of and ways of working and enabling and empowering teams to make good decisions. So basically, how do you build a culture where you trust the decisions that you're not in the room for? And so that has really been, that's not just for product. I mean, I think that's generally as a company scales, but I think, for product specifically, that's super important because, that's our role is based on continuous decision making more than, operational work really. And so that's been my focus from the start. And that and then recruitment, right? Because you need to grow the team, and so those have been my two main focuses, I would say.
Right. So, what do you think is sort of the minimum set of skills for a successful product manager? But also, do you think there is a perfect background to become a head of product at a startup?
Well, maybe on the second question first, I think one of the really cool things about product management is that there isn't a perfect background. Right. And I haven't looked at them in a while, but when you kind of look at the statistics in terms of, if you take the classic tech roles and then you look at their educational or, prior professional background, because usually it's rare that product manager is the first job that someone ever holds. It definitely wasn't true for me. And it's the most diverse of all the roles, right? Not everyone, but like most engineers, come from either science or directly like computer designs degrees or backgrounds, and then designers, tend to kind of like linger around the arty stuff often. So I don't think there is a specific, kind of background that makes you perfect. It might be true by company, like depending on the product that you work on, certain products or certain backgrounds might serve you better than others. But I think as an overall role, not really. I mean, it's really kind of, a jack of all trades, master of none type of role, which is something I really enjoy. And in terms of the kind of wider skill set or the, key skills, it's a really like complex role, and there's a lot of things, but I think there's a few like non-negotiables. And I think one is definitely communication, because you sit across so many different kind of departments and collaborate with them, and you do a lot of influencing throughout the company. Another one is just what we discussed earlier, like this ability to be really customer centric. And then I think data literacy is really important. And then lastly, I would say, there's an element in product, and it's part based experience, but I think it's also like you either have it or you don't, kind of a certain instinct, like what's the quality of your decisions when there's not data to support it, right? And a part of that is experience, but I think it's also like a certain kind of trait that, is more innate in some people than others.
And how much do you think does the domain expertise matter? For example, you come from a video background, but you're obviously VP of product at an insurer company. So is this something that could be acquired on the go and can be learned on the go? Or do you think that domain expertise really matter?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was a complete insurance newbie, and, obviously we have people at Marshmallow that come from, more classic insurance background, and, they'll have to suffer my stupid questions for, a lot longer from here on in. And, and we have, I would say, like there's a few people in the product and design teams that have prior insurance experience, but it's not a requirement when we hire. And I think, what's much more important as a product manager is, I kind of speak of it like, what's the operating system versus the apps that are on it, right? And I think I rather have like the general aptitude and the hunger to learn and the ability to drive deep, because I think that's much harder to learn and ultimately to coach and develop than specific domain knowledge. And you then obviously, of course, have to like dive deep and absorb that. But I think there's almost a benefit of having to do that, fresh. I mean, it's a broad answer, and in some cases, there's certain types of products, even within insurance, where a certain background is probably needed, at least by some on the team, to have that there. But generally speaking, I find that the general kind of makeup and aptitudes of a product manager are much more important than any specific domain knowledge.
Right. In our previous conversation, you mentioned that you're actively hiring. We're gonna share the link to your career page in the show
Oh, yes,
notes.
please.
Yes, of course. So what qualities are you looking for when hiring people for your team?
Yeah, so definitely, we control for the things that I mentioned earlier. So the customer centricity, data literacy, strong communication, kind of decision-making ability. And then we also check very heavy on, an alignment. Like culture is super important at Marshmallow. And I find a lot of companies say that, but like, the moment I stepped through the door here, and like also when I started talking to Alexander and Oliver and David, who are our founders, that becomes very apparent. And so we also very much check for cultural fit around our values. So they deal with being able to move at pace and move fast and moving the needle. We also, like I said, have a very heavy feedback culture. And so we call that open and honest. And so the ability in your work and also in how you deal with colleagues to, just be honest and direct and provide like valid feedback and take feedback well. And so those are things among some others that we control for. But I think, generally speaking, it's around like the general like aptitude and that cultural fit.
Right. So, and how do you detect this during the interview process? That's one thing I really struggle with. For example, for your
Yeah.
kind of accountability, and as you say, moving the needle and knowing that what you do matters and you're kind of really driven and sort of results driven is super important. But how do you detect this during the interview process? For example, now when you're speaking to candidates, what are your tricks to find out if this person really would suit the culture of the company?
I think, yeah, I mean, part of it is experience based.
Yeah.
But I think, so we do a mixture of kind of behavioral type interviews where, we ask the candidates to go quite deep at times into past examples of their work that would either like show certain behavioral traits. And, as you hear those stories, it talks a lot about like also like, the hard skills and how they navigate problems and how they focus on the customer or not. And then we also have, what we call the product challenge. And that's, where we, some of the bigger tech companies do this, like Facebook has a version of this, Google does something where it's more around like hypothetical product scenarios that we work with you through together. And so then there's, different things that we listen in at different stages. And so, in the product challenge, there's, you often pick up if there's like a drive to get to an outcome, maybe even slightly better than in some of the behavioral issues, and just like a base sense of, how creative is their thinking, and how kind of settled is their thinking as a product manager. And so we kind of like try to, combine these approaches. And then we have a bar raiser, we're developing kind of a bar raiser, which is, loosely inspired by what I think Amazon made that famous, but it exists in a lot of companies now, where we also make sure that someone from a team that is not trying to urgently hire, has a view of the candidate and make sure that we're not out of kind of desperation make a wrong hire. And so hiring is really, really important at Marshmallow, and we invest a lot of time in that process.
In your LinkedIn bio, you say that 99% of the problems we need to solve are still ahead of us. So tell me, what are the 3 main problems you're planning to solve in the next year?
Oh, yeah. So I don't know if there's, well, thankfully there's probably more than 3, but, I mean, we're still a fairly young company. So I think growth will continue to play a big role for us. And the other thing is that we, like I said, we really want to kind of focus in on this relationship with the customer. And then I think actually thinking about it, coming back to growth as well, is like, how do we grow, right? Until you maybe like hit the Series B, like growth is the be all and end all of pretty much every startup, and it's almost at all costs. And now we really have, the luxury, but also the responsibility to grow in a sustainable way without like losing our culture, without losing our focus on the customer, and not kind of like grow ourselves into a corner that we can't get back from, right? And so it's really about, in a way, about that kind of like platformization and thinking about like, would this still work at 10x our size, right? And I think so that's like the shift that we are going through as a company at the moment.
Right. Interesting. So, we're a design studio, product design studio. So we're always on a hunt for like interesting product improvement and tweaks and UX kind of magic. So can you share with us if you've ever done like a small UX improvement or a product tweak that had a disproportionately high impact on the product, considering the effort it requires, something small that turned into a big win?
Sure,
Maybe
yeah.
not only on Marshmallow, but like some of the other companies you worked before.
Sure. We actually have a cool example at Marshmallow that recently happened. Like, I guess not to give like all of the secret sauce away, but we had we slightly changed. I mean, there was a lot of thinking that went into that by several of our teams, but in terms of the customer experience, it wasn't actually a massive change. So we slightly changed our approach to when customers would be made aware of the app and that there is an app, because obviously most insurances, insurance products are still bought on web, right? And that actually had a completely disproportionate impact, first in the app uptake among our customers. And then, one area it really impacted is, unfortunately for those customers that had to put in a claim, the kind of difference in how many of them do that now through the app is massive from that change. And it's really important to us because what also happens if you claim through the app, you're much more likely to claim much earlier after like your crash or your incident occurred. And that's really important for insurers, but also for customers, right? Like the earlier we can get in there and kind of manage the claims process with you, is really important for us. And so, like I said, there was a really small change, but it made a tremendous difference for us and our customers.
No, that's very interesting.
But small changes don't always mean like that there wasn't a lot of work or thinking to go into it, right? That's the
it's always the case, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
does look like something small, but it might have taken months to come to the conclusion to take this
Yeah.
step. So yeah, that is absolutely. And before I let you go, Martin, what's the one product metric you're really obsessed with at the moment? What do you start your day with?
Oh, wow. Well, so we're doing like some planning at the moment for the next year. So unfortunately, it's not one, it's like 20 or so. We're really like in the process at the moment where we, with every team kind of going through what's the few metrics, that we should obsess about, by team, like over the next period of time. And, usually there is not like one killer metric. I think, like I said, a few months ago would have definitely been kind of like top line growth or things like that. But generally speaking, once the product hits a certain maturity, I think the challenge and the fun of it that there really isn't that one thing, right?
Yeah. Okay, so perfect. Thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to have this chat with you. And just to repeat to our listeners and viewers that Marshmallow is actively hiring. We're going to share the link to their career page in the show notes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And like you said, yeah, we're hiring in product, across the seniority levels. We're hiring in product design. So everywhere, a lot of engineers as well. I'm giving our engineering colleagues a shout out. So come and check us out and speak to us.
The Product Show is brought to you by Pony, a design studio helping startups and scale-ups build and optimize their digital products at speed. Check pony.studio to learn more.